Welcome to the REI Agent, a holistic approach to life through real estate. I'm Mattias, an agent and investor.
And I'm Erica, a licensed therapist.
Join us as we interview guests that also strive to live bold and fulfilled lives through business and real estate investing.
Tune in every week for interviews with real estate agents and investors.
Ready to level up?
Let's do it.
Welcome back to the REI Agent. I am here alone, which means I cannot be stopped. I will be able to go on my rants. I will be able to, speak from the heart and not have any eye rolling for my lovely co-host. I was really fired up a few episodes back when I was going on a rant, and I think I said getting it, and was talking about just how I feel like I'm really living a really good life right now because I'm out there working hard on different aspects of my life. And I listened to it again at the intro, and I told her, "Oh, that was a really good intro." And she's like, "Yeah, you just kind of rambled." Well, guys, you're in for it again. I'm going to ramble, and nobody's going to stop me. But no, anyway, I made a post today, the day of recording this anyway, about a life hack, and it was, join cults that are good for you. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that and get into kind of that theme that I've had for the past year or so. I am in CrossFit. That's what I was referring to. I fully believe that it's one of the best ways to get in good shape. And that part of that is because it is such a motivating community to be a part of, and that you want to really do well, and you want to really get better. For me, it's partly to be better than other people. Like, there's a competition aspect of it for sure. I'm not going to lie about that, but more so, it's learning a new skill, getting better at a new thing, like getting a new PR for a squat or a snatch, or being able to learn a muscle up for the first time, or being able to get double unders with the jump rope, or there's so many elements to CrossFit that you can kind of get better at, and seeing that progression and seeing that improvement to work on a skill like a muscle up or a pull up, all those things, to work on that for a long time and then finally get it is such a good, rewarding feeling. It's not so fun when you're not able to get that muscle up the next time you try it. But eventually you keep working at it and you get really good at it. So I wanted to relate that to also the Better Life Tribe. Both of these are not actually cults, guys. It's just a joke. It's meant for, to be a bit shocking. But I did join the Better Life Tribe. Brandon Turner put this on. It's kind of like a mastermind for real estate investors. And I joined that early at the beginning of the year, and I have a group of accountability people that I meet with every week. We go over our goals, and we go about talking about our progress in that week for the goals, and just kind of relate them to how we're doing overall for the whole year, for the big vision. And when I went to a conference in May for the Better Life Tribe, Brandon shared that he kind of wanted to create or model this whole thing off of CrossFit because of how people are so diehard about it. And so there's a joke about CrossFit. There's a vegan CrossFitter that does meditation and does cold plunges every day and has an Athletic Greens affiliate link. Which of those things are they going to talk about first? And that's just kind of a funny joke to say that people absolutely love it when they get into it. And so my point about all this is I feel like it's a life hack. If you get yourself into a situation that you're kind of addicted to doing something that's good for you, that is having a benefit for your life, it's perfect, right? I've done all sorts of different exercise. I think when I first got into exercising at all in high school, I think I started with running. I'm not a runner. I'm meant for pushing boulders around and beating my head with a club. I'm not meant for escaping things. I'm not fast. But it's something that I did, I did consistently, and I've done a couple half marathons. And there is rewarding elements to that for sure. And I understand that other people are probably more inclined to run just their body type, but also probably just, the ability to get out, be alone with your thoughts. I can totally understand that. And I think that there's a great place for that. I've done like an Orange Theory equivalent, which I was really into. And I learned from that experience that I think that joining some sort of exercise group is just one of the best life hacks for trying to stay in shape. And because you join a tribe and you get into this group of people and you go through hardship together. And I think that's a really key element that really bonds you with people in a setting like that, because you have to go through a really hard workout. And Orange Theory is hard. I'm not going to diss it. I'm not going to say, CrossFit's superior for all reasons in every way. But it's both of those. You have to go through really hard things and get through it, and then come out the other side and feel, victorious, feel accomplished for getting that hardship out of the way. And so I think that's one of the big elements of why those classes can be really addicting. You kind of, you get bonded with the people that you're working out with, and you have accountability as well. People might ask you, what are you doing? Why aren't you here? That kind of stuff. So highly, highly recommend if you've been struggling to, if you feel like you need to get back in shape, or you just feel like you should have some sort of exercise routine, highly recommend doing some sort of class. And I think when you start, especially people, I hear this all the time for CrossFit. I feel like people who would consider starting CrossFit to get in shape first before they go to CrossFit. And that's not the case at all. Like, I think that's not the case for any kind of class like that, because you just have to do what you can do. And it's always going to be hard, no matter what level you are. Even if you're the most super fit person in the world and you join a CrossFit class and try it for the first time, you're going to find you're going to work to your limit. And that's what the point is that you push yourself to work harder than what's comfortable. Like, you try to run fast to get a faster time, the fastest time you can. And so if you haven't really pushed yourself hard in a workout, that it's just kind of defeating the purpose. But again, all that to say, like, it's doesn't matter what level you're at, you're going to work hard and you're going to get through it and you're going to feel better afterwards. So I think that, one of the best things that I've done for myself is to become a cult member of the CrossFit clan. And then also this Better Life Tribe has been such a blessing for me as well. I've been super motivated by it. It's been perfect for me to keep, going and be on track. But also, I'm part of a group of people that if I have a question, that something comes up that I've never encountered before, or I don't know how to handle, I have people I can ask. I have close friends that probably have done it. An example of this would be recently we were exploring doing some sort of lease option deal. And I know the idea behind it, but I didn't really fully understand it. So I had people that could send me forms to look at and to kind of explain their process, how they've done it in the past. And it's just a great, great network. And again, there's been multiple times where I get put back in track for the book writing, for whatever. I get re-energized to do what I've set out to do. And so again, I think that the more, and maybe cults aren't the right word, maybe tribes are the right word. That sounds much better. It's not as shocking, but I think the more tribes you join, the better you're going to feel. Like I feel we're meant to be part of tribes as evolutionary. So not huge groups necessarily. They might be related to a bigger group, but kind of having a core group of people that you work out with. I think a lot of people would probably experience this in their churches as well. So I think it's just a really positive thing that we as people need. I know Eric and I have talked about needing a third place, which I think also very much is in line with what I'm talking about. And what I mean by a third place is you have your job, you have your home. Now you need a third place to go, or to have, a tribe in. And that's, again, CrossFit can check that box. You're a gym. I think if you're at a regular time and you're seeing the same people in a gym, I think that can accomplish it too. But I think there is something about a class setting for that social aspect that will kind of increase. And I'm a social person, so I get that I might be kind of not, what does it for me, it may not be perfect for everybody else. But I would highly recommend, if you are looking to get into an exercise routine and you haven't, explored anything yet, to explore some sort of class, so that you can get that element of it that will keep you going and keep you motivated to become a more fit version of yourself. Anyway, I succeeded to rant for about 10 minutes. I can't wait. We should have a reaction video. That'd be good. Let's do a reaction video of Erica watching my little rant at the beginning. Part of it is, she hasn't heard this stuff before. I mean, she has heard this stuff before, so it's not a surprise to her. But no, I joke. We hopefully it shows through that Erica and I have a great relationship, and this podcast has been so fun to do with her, and in giving us something more in common to do together. But let's get into our guest here. Today we have Terrie Schauer. Terrie is coming from Montreal, Canada. I very much screwed up and said Toronto, because I think when I did some research about her, she studied in Toronto for a little bit. So I do apologize it's probably anybody that lives in Montreal probably really hates me for that. But anyway, Terrie is fascinating. Terrie got her PhD. And she'll get into that a little bit as well, but she is very intelligent. She's been a competitive martial artist, and she has a book, and she has a coaching, and she's very intelligent, and she can get into combining why like mindfulness is important in your business, but and she relates that to her martial arts practice as well. All of that is stuff that we got into in this podcast. So we covered a lot of different things. She also has her real estate license, and it's her broker's license, and she's able to do a couple deals a year, but mostly uses it for the benefits to her business, not to pursue buyer and seller clients. So anyway, without further ado, we have Terrie Schauer. Enjoy. All right, welcome back to the REI Agent. I am here with Terrie Schauer. I said your last name correct, right, Terrie?
You sure did. It's shower like the shower.
Yeah, I've got interesting enough, my wife's uncle is named Schauer. I don't know very many Schauers. Same spelling.
I'm the only one in when there were phone books, I was the only one in the phone book. So
I feel your pain. There's not many Mattiases around. But anyway, Terrie, thanks so much for joining us. You are coming out of, is it Toronto, Canada?
Montreal.
I am sorry. I did do my homework.
You silently for the entire show.
Anybody listening from Canada is going to really hate me. So sorry about that. But anyway, you are an investor, landlord, and also agent. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate and your journey? Because you also, if I remember correctly, you also you studied in school for a while. Yeah, tell us about your story about how you got into real estate.
Yeah, sure. So I'm pretty much your quintessential accidental landlord. I studied in Toronto, actually, funnily enough, so you weren't that far off.
That's where I got it from.
Yeah. And when I went to college, there was no space in student residences. And so I ended up living in this crazy co-op house that was not managed. And so basically I moved out of my parents' house at 19, and then the day after found myself voted house manager by the housemates. Okay. And turned out actually was kind of good at it. And then after doing that for a couple of years, I house hacked before house hacking was a thing. Yeah. And then I went to study in Vancouver. So I've done the trifecta of the 3 Canadian major cities. Right. And when I moved to Vancouver, I rented a house and basically set up a house hack and cut my overhead like that. And then when I moved back to Montreal, I was like, hey, Dad, I've been doing this for 5 years now. Let's buy an investment property and I'll run it this way. So then I did that in 1, 2, 3 properties. And then I got tapped out of borrowing capacity. And then I was kind of at this crossroads at the end of grad school. So I did a PhD in nothing to do with real estate. It's in communications. And then I kind of had this fork in the road where I had to decide, am I going to be a prof? And is that going to be my life? Or am I going to take the real estate road? And at that point, I decided no, actually, I didn't feel like academia was the right kind of place for me. I felt like I had more like a business inkling at that time. And so then at the same time, I got my broker's license and started a property management company.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that kind of grew. Like it was initially, I was just like managing house hacks basically, because that was the model I knew, and it was a great way to add value. So I was able to like offer my clients, okay, I'm going to like 1.5 times your rent because I'm going to rent by the room. And like I had my, model that allowed me to do that. And then I started brokering, and at that point, like I was really a kid who like didn't honestly know that much about stuff. And then in a weird way, friends and family suddenly started doing deals with me. And then the management really took over, and like I built up like my management portfolio, and then figured out how to scale the investing a bit. And then now the brokering is really, it's something that I kind of do as a sideline, because when I see that I can help people out, like I kind of can't help myself from doing it. So typically like
Right.
investors who are around me want to make another move, or they want to like structure their portfolio, including their single family home, in a way that allows them to like own 2 or 3 rental properties as well. But we had a little off-camera discussion about how like my broker's license, it is actually quite integral to how I do business. So we can talk about that if you want to.
Well, yeah, I wanted to go back for a second and just ask how many years you had invested into like the continuing education, or not continuing, but like the after high school education to get your PhD. I mean, that's a big amount of time, I imagine, right?
Yeah, it was a 10-year road. Because like undergrad, master's degree, PhD. And I would say like about halfway through the PhD, like I kind of realized that was not going to be the road for me. Like, I don't know how much your listeners are tuned into this, but like academia has become kind of a weird place in terms of you can't really necessarily say what you want or what you believe. Yeah. And I really ran into that problem because being someone who has like maybe, I guess, more like neoliberal kind of beliefs, like I was trying to write a thesis that was, a bit right-ish. I mean, hardly right in American terms. Let's say right-ish in Canadian terms.
Okay.
Like, whatever, the east side of California, maybe. And it was too right-wing for my institution. And so they basically like held me hostage and like, delayed my graduation until I rewrote it more to their ideological leanings. Mm-hmm. And then for me, that's like, okay, like I'm done. Like I'm not going to make my life in that direction. So.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all for that. And so has there been moments where you've regretted going down that path? If you have a really bad tenant? Or...
No. And like the really awesome thing is that like, so now I have a podcast. I wrote a book also. And like, I get to speak and communicate ideas that I actually believe in all the time from my own platform that I've built in this wonderful world of real estate. And so like, I still love ideas. I still love teaching, and actually have like a coaching program for investors. And so like, I'm able to do all those things. Like that's what got me into academia in the first place. But like, I'm free to do it, in line with my own values from this platform that I've built. So it's actually very cool. Yeah.
So there's a lot of so there have been a lot of the things that you learned in academia that you can translate to what you're doing now. It just in your own way. And I mean, that is one of the things that motivates me the most, is just kind of the freedom to do things the way I want to do them in real estate. Cause it's not like I don't really not work much. Like, you know what I mean? Like I work a lot, but it's kind of the direction that I want to work. So that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, so then tell us a little bit about how you use your real estate license in your current business structure.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like, look, I guess I'm doing 4 or 5 transactions a year, and like, that's not my bread and butter. That's like, I would say more of a sideline compared to the money I make in investing. Like really my main income is, buying and optimizing buildings. And those are big chunks of change. There's then also my management practice and like my brokerage, which I would put financially kind of on the same level. Mm-hmm. Then obviously, like as an investor, the fact of having access to the back end of the MLS, if you're working in, investment stuff, it's so great because it means I have access to the leases, I have access to sellers' declarations. And if I didn't, and I can use Centris really as like a nice database. And if I didn't, I would have to be constantly bothering my broker for those back end accesses. So like just that alone makes my, permit fees and continuing education obligations, like justifies it on its own. Sure. Then there is also the referral aspect, because like I have a real estate coaching business, and for my students who come through the coaching business, like I actually have set up a Chinese wall that I can't service them, because I don't want to end up in that like conflict of interest zone where I'm the coach and the broker, because like if something goes south on that, like I don't want to be holding both of those like bags at the same time. But it means that I get to do referral business. And so I'm able to refer to like, mortgage brokers or to like other real estate brokers. And then obviously there's a financial reward to that, but I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have my broker's license. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So like, I think it depends on how like people think that, oh, I want to get my real estate broker's license and I need to like be out there doing transactions. That's actually not the case. Like you can really build a nice business. And I have colleagues who only do referrals.
That makes a lot of sense. I think sometimes there would be a little bit, I've heard of people that have kind of shifted more into just the investing side of things and consider letting their license go for the, there's the dues are somewhat, they come up every year, but I think more so potential added liability for having your license and that extra kind of hoops if you're a realtor, that kind of thing. But I think often they do just hold it because for what you're talking about, and they're not trying to practice unethically or anything like that either. So it doesn't really come up. I am curious, you talked about, doing value adds. So is your main investing model, buying a property and doing a syndication, fixing it up, and then, getting better rents for it that you then refinance and hold, or what do you do with those properties?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really a property manager. Like if you had to ask me, like, what's your core skill? Like, that's really what it is. And I've like monetized it in different ways, but that's really my skill. So like, I will do construction if I have to, but like, it's really not my favorite thing. And the types of properties that I target are ones that are just very poorly managed. Sure. And like, to be transparent, like the market that I operate in, which is Quebec in Canada, it's like the Francophone area in Canada. And like, this fact that we have very tenant-friendly laws and that we function in French basically keeps a lot of people out. And so there's a lot of like very poor management, and like I'm happy I can do very nice business just targeting those kind of properties. Then like I have a management model, I guess, that I put in, and that's going to be then how I optimize the building. And so like it ends up being just like a lot of zero tolerance policies on like all the gamut of bad behaviors, from like, weed smoking to like pest control to late payments to like all kinds of issues. And that ends up then kind of creating a bit of turnover and then like cleaning the place up, and then you can attract a better quality of people. And then, that it's really a management optimize.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, when you talked about having very tenant-friendly laws, do you have rent control?
Yeah.
What's that look like? Is that like a 5%, no more than a 5% increase, or?
Oh, I'm going to blow your mind when you see how commie Canada is. Like, yeah. So like every year the government puts out like a increased coefficient that's indexed to actually less than inflation typically.
Oh, wow.
And so you're only allowed to increase by that amount, with excluding certain fees. And then there's like an online calculator where you have to plug in all your building expenses, and basically then it spits out a number at the end, and this is the increase that you're allowed. But actually very few landlords here, when I'm talking about like low professionalism, like very few landlords even make use of that tool. And if you honestly use it properly, like you can get okay increases, but most people are like, oh, I'm just going to increase $10, So like, yeah, so like there's that. And then even between rentals, you're actually not supposed to adjust rent to market. You are supposed to increase by that coefficient, but like that's a very loose set of rules. And so like if you know how it works, you can kind of play the game in such a way where that's not a real restriction. That
was going to be my next question, is as you're getting better quality tenants, the turnover, is that an opportunity too? Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's there's a lot of talk, or we had talk here recently about doing a nationwide rent control for the United States, and had some guests on that we've talked about how that can actually be worse for tenants in the long term. Do you have any opinions on that, going through the system?
Yeah, no, like, I have lots of opinions on that, as you could imagine, from like somebody who operates in this kind of area. And like, look, as somebody who operates here, like for us, rent control, it's like a blessing and a curse, right? Like I talk to people in the US and red states, and like, because their rents are constantly adjusting to market. the optimizers like me don't have the kind of opportunities I have. Like my business model works well in a rent control market because like basically I like have strategies to like work around rent control. So like for the investor, it's, you know, it's a blessing and a curse. For the tenant, I mean, like, look, I really think I think it's a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing because when you see like the strategy here is basically like your rent control apartments don't invest $1. And so like there are people, and 2 units can be next to one another. And like one is like living in squalor. Yes, they're paying like half of market rent, but like no landlord here is going to invest a dime in there,
right,
only to protect the building, right? And so like, yeah, you'll repair the piping, but like everything else is rotting and falling apart. And like Montreal, like, which is the biggest city that has this severe rent control in Canada, like we have most of the biggest percentage of depreciating rental stock. And we're actually losing rental units every year because nobody's building, because why would you build in a city where like it's better to have condos because nobody wants to deal with rent control. And so like it's this whole vicious cycle. And like really what's happening is like, you know, you've got old ladies like living in 3-bedroom units by themselves that they're paying 30% of the price for. And then the government complains that there's not enough apartments for families. So it's like makes no sense. Anyway, that's my opinion.
No, I mean, it's one of those things that can sound nice and sound like it's a good thing on paper and when you talk about it, but then when you actually get into the nuts and bolts. So it's really, you know, I think we talk about it in theory, you know, on this podcast with other American investors, but to actually hear what the end result is, thank you for that. That's really, really fascinating. So trying to think of a good follow-up question to all that. Now, what books do you have a book out? You have a podcast. Tell us a little bit more about your coaching and what you do in that realm.
Yeah, absolutely. So my book is called The Mindful Landlord. And it really, came out of, like, I did spend a whole lot of time in academia. I also had a career as a martial artist. I was a semi-kickboxer for a while. And like in that really like working on, I'm not going to say mindset. I don't like that word. Like working on mindfulness and understanding how your consciousness operates really allows you to get some of those performance gains. And like, especially in something like landlording, that's like so stressful and where you really need to like make decisions that come from a good place. That's what motivated me to write that book that really talks about how do you put like mindfulness and investing together in a way that's not gonna, the tagline is for profit and peace of mind. And so the idea is that, you know, that your profit should not come at the expense of your peace of mind. So that's kind of the book. And then my podcast is called The Real Escape Investing Podcast. And, not so much focused on mindfulness, but more on this idea of, you know, we all get into real estate investing to try to escape the constraints of time, income, and geography, right? Like one of those things is oppressing us and we want to gain a little bit of liberty from them. And, one of the things that happens along the way is that sometimes, you know, we lose sight of it or we sacrifice it or like it's not clear, like, are we really getting the leverage we want in those aspects? And so that's really what the podcast is about, is just how to, you know, plan your escape or how to like leverage yourself in such a way that you're not so constrained.
Leverage is also a good jujitsu thing, right?
It is. How do you how do you when you're like, you know, 5'4" and not very heavy, like how are you able to, you know, use a minimum amount of force for the maximum amount of result? And for sure, like if there's a physical principle to that, there's like 100% mental principles to that as well.
And so I also think when you talk about mindfulness, I also think about, like meditation, that kind of thing, and being kind of aware of the present moment. Is that elements of what your book's about as well? You said mindset is not really what you're going after, but is that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So like, I'll give you just a 2-minute kind of redux of what it is, right?
Please.
Like basically like mindfulness is, there are 3 aspects to consciousness. So there will be the thinking mind, which is like your thoughts that are like the radio constantly going. Then there will be like your emotions. And those are, I like to liken them to either the weather or the dashboard lights in your car, right? Like fear, for example, is a dashboard light. It's telling you, here's something you need to pay attention to. And then me as the one who's driving the car, I get to decide, am I going to pull over and worry about this? Or am I going to just, doesn't matter, like this light, I don't need to pay attention to. So there's my emotions that I can, learn to interact with as I would the weather or a warning light. And then underneath that is the watcher. And this is what ends up being called presence, or like being in the now. And the more through things like meditation, through martial arts, through yoga, like the more you can learn to identify with the watcher, the more you're able to use the other aspects of consciousness, so your emotions and your thinking mind, the more they begin to serve you as opposed to you being used by them.
Awesome. How I'm just curious now, because I've definitely been a fan of like Sam Harris, place things like that. I've done some of the mindfulness, his app, his course, and other apps for mindfulness meditation. I'm curious about, so I'm familiar with the process of like, pay attention to your breath and kind of turn off all the other distractions and that kind of mindfulness, but you related it to martial arts. And I'm just curious about how that connection is. I mean, obviously the goal would be for you to be kind of in this state of awareness at all times, but how do you relate it to something so physical that you would, maybe to me who does not practice, would imagine you would be very far from mindfulness when you're fighting?
Well, let me put it this way. Like, if you think of like a monk, right? Or like as a white belt, like, trust me, the white belts who come into the gym, like, are not mindful, right? Like, we always joke, it's like there's a 200-pound like male nose breather who's like, right? Like, that's like not mindful. But like the working the, like, it's called the mind body connection, and like getting into a flow state. So like there is the Sam Harris, like, let me sit on a cushion and like really work my presence muscle, right? And like that is one the most, let's say, hardcore way. Like if you were doing a diet, that would be like a fast, right? Like that's like the most hardcore way you can do it. Yeah. And then we go like, so I actually started in karate before getting into kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. And like karate is actually, maybe it's like keto, right? Like you are training your capacity to remain present while training your body, and to be hyper aware of like, where's my fist? Where's my gaze going when I turn and change positions? Am I looking all over, or are my eyes focused on where my opponent would be, right? And so like working that mind-body connection is a way to be present in movement. And so like when we think of meditation, we think of Sam Harris and sitting on the cushion, but like things like yoga and like more traditional martial arts where there are like positions and stuff like that, that's like definitely working that presence muscle, but in a way that's physical. And like even meditation pros or monks, like they will do walking meditations, they will do various different things like that where there is a movement component. Obviously when you then add the opponent factor, right? Because like jiu-jitsu, you're not doing katas. In jiu-jitsu, you're like always kind of like fighting. But that once you get up like to higher belt levels, like there is a flow state that you get into there, and then it becomes a presence game that you're playing with someone else. And like that can actually be like really beautiful, right? Like if you take how, we play with animals, right? Like I have dogs, I have chickens, and like my interaction with those creatures, like it's a very present based thing. Or kids, if you have little kids, right? Like you are very in the present moment when you're doing that. And so it's, to be able to get into that flow state while doing something with another creature, like that's just like a different form of that thing. So
I love it. Yeah, no, the flow, explaining it as a flow state makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that one of the ways that I've experienced that as well is like music. If you're ever playing music with other people and you can get into that flow state, it's one of the best feelings. And you have kind of unlocked something that I've never really fully understood or put words to, as to why I feel like there has been such a push or such a popularity rise in jiu-jitsu. And I think that makes a lot of sense with being able to get into that flow state. And I mean, I don't know if it's similar to a dance, but in a more aggressive way, maybe. But
and it gets really wild, right? Because like there's this whole like ego aspect of this, right? And so like one of the things that you're doing in like mindfulness training in general is to understand like what is the position of this thing that is me within this wide universe, right? And so like if you get really Buddhist, you're like, okay, well, there is no me and it. There is only the one thing, and I am part of that one thing. And so like when I affect the outside world, I'm ultimately affecting myself. But then if you like translate that into martial arts, like in the higher belts where you get to is like there's my ego, because like my ego always wants to win. But like sometimes I'm training with a 10-year-old, or like if you're a man, sometimes you're training with, you know, 140-pound woman. And then the way that you need to manage that, match the strength of the other person and understand that like it's not about winning, right? Like if it's about I learn, you learn, the way I play that game has to be different. And so like that's what happens between, you know, the white belt nose breather who like needs to win that match because his ego's involved, to like when you're a black belt and like, you know, then I can train with that white belt and be like, you know what, it's okay, you're stronger than me. Like if you want to learn, yeah, you can pin me to the ground, but like you're not learning anything and neither am I. So let's not have our egos be the most important thing. Let's have the game be more important. That's
awesome. That's a really good description. Yeah, that's fascinating. You're making me want to go sign up for something. where should I start? I want to go be that 200-pound nose breather. No, that's awesome. And it's super well said. And I can see, I mean, having control, having mastery of yourself, of your emotions, all that is so, you know, critical for, you know, real estate, managing properties, managing people's emotions when it comes to buying and selling real estate. I mean, that is just, it's a high emotions, high stakes, high stress, and being able to manage yourself is just such a important thing for your clients' benefits, for your own personal benefits, for the longevity of your career. You can get burned out easily if you don't learn how to master that. So sounds like your book is amazing. I want to check it out.
Yeah, great. No, but I think, you know, I just want to just kind of like riff off of that. And I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, like this is like, obviously like my book is more about landlording and a bit less about brokering, but like, it's the same thing, you know, like people, their level of emotional involvement with their homes, and your tenants are like emotionally involved with their homes. And if you're buying and selling homes, like people are super emotionally involved with that, right? And so like that's actually one of the reasons why I think I didn't become like a full-on broker. Like when I work with people, I work with investors, because that level of emotional involvement, it's too much for me, you know? I'm like, I can manage it in the tenant context because that's like one type of conversation. But if you have to be like managing like, you know, people's anxiety and it's their biggest asset and their home, I mean, could you do anything that's more stressful to someone? Like that's like the most loaded aspect of someone's life. And so like I think real estate brokers, man, it's like the psychology behind that is very important.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And you know, like I said, we're trying to help people learn how to get into investing, and one of the decisions if they do that is are they going to self-manage? And I think my point I made earlier is not only do you have to manage with a new type of stress, and you know, like what we're talking about here with tenants and being different than what you might be used to it in the sales world, you also have to deal with the added liability of being a realtor and taking on property, managing it yourself. So those are things to definitely consider. I imagine you have to stay up on laws. I would imagine it's even harder for you to stay up with all the different regulations, changes for tenant rights, the you know, like assisted or animal. What are they called?
Comfort animals or whatever it is, like service animals. There you go.
That's been a huge thing here recently. I imagine you have to do a lot of continuing ed and staying up on that kind of thing as well.
Well, like actually, funnily enough, like the continuing ed that I have to do is to maintain my real estate license. The world of property management here is completely unregulated. Like if my 8-year-old wants to call himself a property manager, like he can go into business as a property manager tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's like really unregulated. Now, you're not going to be all that effective because for sure there's a ton of regulation. And like what I would say to the point of like the liability of holding a broker's license, like I get that question actually a lot, funnily enough. And like some people are even like, some investors are even like, oh, I'm going to let my broker's license lapse because, you know, I'm going to have to declare it when I make a promise to purchase. And like, maybe the seller is not going to like that. And like, I really like, yeah, so I have an additional form that I have to fill out whenever I make a promise to purchase on something, but like, it really kind of ends there. And like, I find that like the level of professionalism, because it's like, if you are able to show up and be like, look, I'm a professional investor. Yes, I have my broker's license. Doesn't everybody who's a professional? And so like, I can close, I have this, like, we speak the same language. And like, actually, it's honestly more of an advantage for me than it is a disadvantage, because like, especially in the investment world, people want to deal with professionals. They don't want to deal with like, you know, newbies or people who are going to do all sorts of weird things that are going to make a transaction go sideways. They want to sell at a reasonable price, close, not have someone who's going to freak out because one of the tenants has roaches. And so like, the more that you're able to present yourself as a professional, and that real estate license is just like a notch on your belt of professionalism, really.
Yeah. And I think more what I'm getting at is, if you're not a licensee and you have a few property that you manage, you don't have quite the same level of fair housing law, like adherence in the States, compared to if you are a licensee. And that's more what I'm referring to, because I totally get what you're saying. I mean, I think that's, the more you can present that you're gonna do the deal, that you have experience in it, for sure. I feel like you're gonna get them to want to work with you more quickly. But if we could go back, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but if we could go back, and do you have any other book recommendations? You have your book. You can tell me the name of it one more time. We'll have it in the show notes.
The Mindful Landlord.
Mindful Landlord. Do you have any other books that you would recommend for people to read that have been fundamental, or something that you really think is a good read? It could even be personal, fun. It doesn't have to be a business book.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like, it's really a question of like which register, right? Because like, you know, let's say we're talking about the world of mindfulness. If you haven't read Dan Millman's Way of the Peaceful Warrior, like, definitely read that. That was the seminal book that like sent me down the mindfulness rabbit hole, you know, when I was 25 or whatever. So obviously, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you're in the world of investing and you haven't read that, shame on you.
Right.
And I've just recently gotten into the Hormozi series. So like the Leads book, in Coaching, Creating an Offer. But I think like thinking about leads and how you structure your business. I hear he's got a sales book coming out. I think if you're a broker, like, to understand that, I think will help you with this like marketing aspect, because I think like that's a pain point that a lot of brokers have with like, or agents have with structuring. Like, now you have to be this one-stop shop of like real estate expert, but you also have to be a marketing expert. And so to understand like, you know, lead acquisition and like servicing the leads and how you want to interact with that. What are some things that you might do? How might you advertise? How might you create networking events that would benefit your business? And so to just like, you know, everybody thinks it's all about Instagram reels, but like marketing can be so much bigger than that. And I think if you expand your mind on that, like, it's really only going to be good for your business.
Oh, that's great. You know, honestly, I didn't realize he had books. It makes sense. I just never looked into it. So I'll have to check those out. That's awesome. Thanks for the recommendations. And if people want to have more information about your coaching, about you in general, or is there a good resource? Are you active on Instagram, website?
Yeah, I mein, like, I got all the usual social media channels. Probably my favorite is LinkedIn.
Okay.
I find that just like the more kind of serious one, but I'm on Instagram as well. And I have my website, terrieschauer.com. So that's kind of the portal into all things Terrie. And you can then see what of the Terrie suite is appealing to you if you like some of the content in this episode.
A la carte. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Terrie. I love how we got, I wasn't really expecting to go into the mindfulness stuff as much. And it's been a off and on passion of mine, something that I wish I would do more frequently. So super, super awesome conversation. And I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the REI Agent.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe to catch new shows every week.
Visit reiagent.com for more content.
Until next time, keep building the life you want.
All content in the show is not investment advice or mental health therapy. It is intended for entertainment purposes.